Chapter 478 to 479. The current Edo Tensei is different from the Edo Tensei used by Kabuto during the Fourth Great Shinobi War. There are two reasons for this. First is that the development of Edo Tensei jutsu is not advanced enough, so the jutsu is still in the premature stage. And the second reason is that Orochimaru has added several restrictions on the Edo Tensei to make sure that the reanimated beings remain in his absolute control. This is why several abilities of Edo Tensei are not in Orochimaru's control. For example, unlike Kabuto, the current Orochimaru cannot occupy the bodies of Edo Tensei, and directly perceiving the battle situation through the reanimations is somewhat difficult for Orochimaru, because he cannot carry out ultra-long-distance remote control of the Edo Tensei. Of course, this also has its advantages, as Orochimaru's location cannot be perceived by the Edo Tensei, either unlike what happened with Kabuto. In the canon, Kabuto established a long-distance chakra connection with all his Edo Tensei. As a result, his location was perceived by Uchiha Itachi, who came to him and directly gave him a shot of Izanami to undo the Edo Tensei jutsu, which became one of the major turning points of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. Anyway, because Orochimaru can't occupy the body of Edo Tensei on the battlefield, therefore, he cannot confirm the exact battle situation at the moment, but through observation from distance, and the fact that the forest has returned to calm, he judged that perhaps the battle has really come to an end, and Fujin has been defeated. It seems the presence of Yuhi Kurinai became the cause of Fujin's defeat. It works for me, I suppose. Now I can also study the secrets of magnet release Kekkai Genkai. Plus, this fight also gave me a lot of data and insight on the shortcomings of Edo Tensei, and I know how to improve this jutsu further, muttered Orochimaru with a thoughtful look. Then he raised his hands to weave the hand signs in order to put back the Edo Tensei inside the coffin. Boom, 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 boom. But just as he prepared to remove the Edo Tensei, the earth trembled. Orochimaru's eyes condensed, his hands came to an abrupt halt, and he muttered to himself, "Is he still not defeated?" As soon as his voice fell, a shocking scene appeared in front of him. Whyish, 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 whyish. Amidst the sound of ground rumbling and wind cutting, countless sharp and thick-boned spears rose from the ground. These bone spears were so sharp that all the trees blocking them were instantly pierced and shredded into multiple fragments. Shikutsumiyaku. Orochimaru was startled when he realized that someone was using this rare Kekkai Genkai, and muttered, "It isn't Fujin but someone else? Is there anyone else here? Could it be Kagaya Takashi of the Akatsuki organization?" The pale white bones were still coming out of the ground, and soon these bone spears reached the shrine and pierced through the stone walls of the shrine. In the blink of an eye, the endless green forest became an endless white bone forest. Wherever eyes could see, only sharp white bone spears were visible. Even the tall tree on which Orochimaru stood wasn't spared, and the bone's soon spears reached him. Orochimaru's figure shook and dangerously avoided the bone spear that suddenly appeared under his feet. But even then, the bone spear managed to cut his cheek slightly and continued to rise high above. Orochimaru landed a little distance away and looked at these bone spears with a dignified expression, then tried to locate the new enemy, who was using Shikatsumiyaku. While Orochimaru was trying to locate the new enemy, suddenly a figure appeared on a bone spear behind him. The figure raised the bone blade, extending out of the palm of his hand, and slashed it horizontally without any hesitation. Slash, puff. The bone blade was slashed across and soon brought a bloody flower. Although Orochimaru was able to perceive the sudden appearance of the person behind him because of sensing the body heat, it was a step too late because the enemy's speed was too fast. He did manage to dodge the attack, but he was still harmed as the person behind him managed to cut his back deeply to the point that inner bones were visible. Dodged it, huh? The person didn't care and again merged back into the bone spear. Orochimaru, who has retreated sharply, turned around and barely managed to see the person who attacked him. And noting the identity of the person, he can't help but frown. Fujin. Although he didn't clearly see the appearance of the person and soon lost trace of his presence, however, Orochimaru was quite certain that it was Fujin. Fujin also has Shikatsumiyaku Kekkai Genkai. Immediately Orochimaru's heart shook, and he muttered to himself, "Fujin can not only use magnet release, but also Shikatsumiyaku? Two Kekkai Genkai at the same time? Was he born with two Kekkai Genkai similar to Terumi Mei of Kirigakure? Or has he stolen them from different Kekkai Genkai shinobi similar to Hirako by using Chimera Jutsu? Both doubts are reasonable, but their implications are different. Now is not the time to delve too deeply into this matter, so after suppressing the doubts in his heart, Orochimaru looked around with utmost vigilance. Orochimaru knows the jutsu the other party is using. It is one of the secret jutsu of the Kagaya clan. The name of this secret jutsu is Dance of the Seedling Fern, and it is one of the strongest jutsu of the Kagaya clan. Once this jutsu is used, a forest of bones will appear, and this entire bone forest will become the opponent's area of control. With this jutsu, Fujin can freely shuttle from one bone spear to another without any worry of being perceived by the enemy. The only shortcoming of this jutsu is that it has high chakra consumption and places a heavy burden on the body of the user. Even the patriarch of the Kagaya clan dare not use it casually, and even if he is in a serious pinch, the patriarch would only use it as a last resort. Orochimaru looked around vigilantly and didn't really care about the injury on his back, as the wound on his back was quickly healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The wound on his back was indeed fatal, but was only for ordinary ninjas. For Orochimaru, such a wound is nothing, after all. He has mastered the secret technique of physical regeneration and the forbidden technique of living corpse reincarnation. Orochimaru can unscrupulously squeeze the potential of the body without a care in the world. And even if the upper limit of maximum cell division in the body is exhausted, it's not that big of a deal for him, as all he has to do is change the vessel. Boom, boom, boom. While Orochimaru looked around vigilantly, the battle between Hashirama and Fujin's bone clone was still going on. Trees and bone spears were fighting against each other, and it was a total mess. Attracted by the sound, Orochimaru glanced at the far end. At this moment, the Edo Tensei Hashirama and Tobirama were entangled in the forest of trees and the forest of bones, which is completely meaningless. After all, the main enemy is there, so Orochimaru decided to call them here. As long as those two Edo Hokage were to arrive near him, Orochimaru has the confidence of winning the battle by dragging it out until Fujin's chakra reserves are exhausted. But just as he revealed his intention to weave the hand signs to summon the Edo Tensei here, hundreds of figures appeared out of the bone spears around him, and all of them rushed towards him. Multi-bone clone jutsu? How high are his chakra reserves? Orochimaru immediately reached this conclusion and immediately crouched towards the ground and spat out countless snakes from his mouth. Formation of 10,000 snakes. Tens of thousands of giant snakes appeared out of Orochimaru's mouth and rushed towards hundreds of bone clones of Fujin. As they reached closer and closer to Fujin's bones clones, the snakes opened their mouth, out of which Kusanagi-like blades appeared and stretched towards the bone clones. Dance of Willow. None of the bone clone was panicked. They just crouched down and several bones appeared out of their bodies. And in this state, all the bone clones started to dodge or defended the Kusanagi-like blades, at the same time, starting a snake-killing spree. While the bone clones were busy dealing with the 10,000 snakes, the main Fujin, who was still hidden inside a bone spear, appeared out, and after weaving the hand seals, he shouted, "Typhoon release! Great consecutive bursting extreme winds." Immediately, under Fujin's control, a massive tornado intense enough to even dwarf the likes of complete body Susanoo was summoned with himself as the center, and everything including the tens of thousands of giant snakes, large bone spears, and even all the bone clones in the vicinity were affected by the high-speed strong winds of the tornado and were instantly shredded into countless pieces and engulfed by the tornado. Typhoon release? Another Kekii Genkai. It seems my guess is indeed correct. Orochimaru thought upon noticing the appearance of such a massive tornado. He didn't dare to be careless in the face of this jutsu, and immediately used hiding in the surface technique to hide under the ground, and then traveled towards the eye of the storm in order to exploit the weakness of this jutsu. The eye of the tornado is the weakness of this jutsu, as there are no winds in the center, so the user is left defenseless here, and Orochimaru intends to exploit this weakness. But how could Fujin not know such an obvious weakness? So, the moment Orochimaru entered under the surface area of the eye of the storm, the bone spears that were still present in the ground immediately started to grow. But different from before, this time, the bones did not grow like spears or blades. Instead, they grew like fibrous roots in order to kill Orochimaru, and if not kill, then make him come out of the ground. The moment Orochimaru noticed the bone roots spreading under the ground and restricting his movements by continuously attacking him, Orochimaru was again surprised and immediately ejected himself out of the ground and then jumped upwards. Since currently the two of them were in the eye of the tornado, so Orochimaru still intended to use this opportunity, and immediately after weaving hand signs, he shouted again, "Earth release, swamp of the underworld." Under Orochimaru's control, the ground in the surrounding turned into a large swamp, so the bone spears that were standing high inside the eye of the storm immediately started to sink. Of course, Fujin had to continuously jump from one bone spear to another in order to not get swallowed by the swamp that was spreading. Seeing that Fujin was jumping around from one bone spear to the other, maintaining his balance in order to stay away from the swamp, Orochimaru smirked and immediately stretched out both his hand towards Fujin. Many hidden shadows snake hand. Whyish, 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 whyish. With the sound of breaking wind, dozens of large snakes shot out of Orochimaru's sleeves and pounced on Fujin. However, even before those dozens of large snakes could approach Fujin, they were all chopped into countless pieces by Fujin's white hair that had elongated and took the form of multiple sharp blades. And Fujin didn't stop there. Immediately after dealing with the many shadow snake hands, he controlled his long white hair and shot hundreds of large hairs samban towards Orochimaru. Hair needle samban. Orochimaru's expression shrank as soon as he saw countless hair needles coming toward him, but soon returned to calm. As one of the legendary Sannin, Orochimaru has also seen Jiraiya use this jutsu countless times, and knows that dodging this jutsu by the virtue of speed alone is almost impossible, So the only method to counter this jutsu is by blocking it. Of course, that's the case for most of the shinobi, but not for him. Slithering snake mode. Orochimaru turned the lower half of his body into a snake's tail, then opened his mouth to appear out of it in order to avoid the range of attack. Then again opened his mouth, but this time the Kusanagi blade stretched out towards Fujin at lightning speed. The hair Senbon of course did their job and pierced Orochimaru's body, but the original Orochimaru had already escaped out of his body by transforming his lower body into a snake. At the same time, the Kusanagi blade was coming towards Fujin at a lightning speed. Of course, Fujin wasn't all that panicked, and hardened all his bones to the utmost degree. The extended Kusanagi sword couldn't successfully pierce through Naruto's four-tailed Kyuubi cloak, so how could it pierce through the extremely hardened bones in Fujin's body? But Orochimaru didn't think so, and seeing Fujin's foolish actions, he smirked. Hehe, you are mine now. After all, only an idiot would try to resist the attack of sword of Kusanagi head-on, right? And just as Fujin expected, the tip of the Kusanagi blade reached near his heart and tried to pierce through, but couldn't because the bones were extremely hard and dense. What? But how could it be possible? This time Orochimaru was really shocked. He never expected that the bones of Fujin could become as hard as the Kusanagi blade. This is simply unbelievable. It must not be forgotten that this sword of Kusanagi in Orochimaru's stomach is also a legendary blade. It can even cut through the adamantine staff, Enma of Sandaime Hokage, yet it couldn't pierce through Fujin's bones. Just how hard are those bones? The degree of Orochimaru's shock can be imagined. Fujin didn't have any change in his expression, just as the tip of Kusanagi's blade touched his chest. He controlled the bone around his chest to wrap around the tip of Kusanagi's blade to make sure that Orochimaru can't dodge his next attack, then stretched out both of his hand and shouted, 10-finger drilling bullets. Whyish, 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 whyish. One after another 10 bone bullets rushed towards Orochimaru, who was hanging in midair. Orochimaru's expression shrank. He immediately released the sword of Kusanagi out of his stomach, then dropped towards the ground, but Fujin was prepared, and he has already used the next jutsu, Art of the Raging Lion's Mane. Instantly, under Fujin's control, his long white hair again stretched out towards Orochimaru, who was in midair. Orochimaru hurriedly weaved hand seals and shouted, Fire release! Flame bullet! Immediately, Orochimaru spat out fire from his mouth to burn the hair that was coming toward him, and of course he succeeded. As Fujin's hair that was coming towards Orochimaru was burned by the flame bullet, a thick smell of protein being charred covered the air. And immediately after defending, Orochimaru stretched out his hand to take back control of the sword of Kusanagi. The sword of Kusanagi that was earlier piercing Fujin's chest rotated under Orochimaru's control, but seeing that it really couldn't penetrate, Orochimaru had it retract back and held it in his hands as he landed on the ground and looked at Fujin with a vigilant expression. As for why couldn't Fujin take control of the sword of Kusanagi? Obviously, because it seems to be spiritually bonded with Orochimaru. Cutting that spiritual connection is not impossible, but it would take time. And time is something Fujin cannot dedicate in the middle of a high-intensity battle. If Orochimaru were to count all the enemies he has faced up to now, then Fujin would undoubtedly be among the top 3. The first position is taken by Tendo Pain aka Uzumaki Nagato, while the second position goes to Uchiha Itachi because of how easily he was killed by Itachi, but Orochimaru has to admit that Fujin is also on the same level as Uchiha Itachi. In Orochimaru's perspective, Fujin is simply a beast, capable of using 3 Kekkei Genkai. Are you kidding? That's 3 Kekkei Genkai, not 3 chakra natures. Orochimaru is quite sure that he has never seen or heard of a single shinobi capable of using 3 Kekkei Genkai through normal means. Of course, Hiriko of the 5 style is not normal, so he can't be counted. Here people are having difficulty being able to awaken 1 Kekkei Genkai, and Fujin is using 3 different Kekkei Genkai. What kind of a joke is this? Not to mention the other guy's taijutsu and kenjutsu skills. Orochimaru is not afraid of physical combat, but in the face of those incredibly tough bone blades that are as tough as his Kusanagi sword, and those swift and fierce taijutsu and kenjutsu skills of Fujin that don't give Orochimaru any opportunity to exploit to his advantage, he started to feel a long-lost sense of fear. Even when facing the demigod Hanzo of the Salamander, or the self-proclaimed god Tendo Pain, Orochimaru didn't feel even a bit of fear, but now he was feeling it because the other party is able to see through him at a glance. After all, if his body were to be chopped into multiple pieces, then even the secret technique of physical regeneration would be meaningless as he can't reattach all his body parts. Ding 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 ding. Metal collision symphony resounded in the field and Orochimaru kept using his Kusanagi sword to resist or parry the attacks of Bone Blade. Even when it was metal versus bones, the sound still felt metallic and sparks flew, which again shows how sharp those bone blades are. How could this guy's physical still be so strong? And what's up with that monstrous strength? Even Tsunade didn't hit so hard. Is he a Senju or what? These doubts were deeply plaguing Orochimaru's mind, as he could see that he was being dominated in the battle. Orochimaru admits that he is not the best when it comes to taijutsu and kenjutsu, but even then his taijutsu and kenjutsu skills are not weak. Orochimaru has faced countless shinobi who specialize in close combat, and he is generally not afraid of physical combat against anyone, not even against the likes of Senju Tsunade of the legendary Sannin. But when facing Fujin, the situation has gotten so passive that Orochimaru fell into a daze, and even remembered his early Jonin days before the Second Great Shinobi War. Back then, he would occasionally practice against the White Fang of the Leaf, Hatake Tsukumo, who killed all his enemies with his white light chakra saber. Yes, the degree of pressure from Fujin made him subconsciously think that he has returned to his early Jonin days. After such a long battle, he has come to realize that he can't defeat or kill Fujin, so he has already started to think of a way to retreat from here. Fujin looked at Orochimaru, who was fleeing in embarrassment, but his expression was still flat and there were no waves on his face. Years of training have made his close combat skills continue to improve, and Fujin has practiced all kinds of combat methods, such as gentle fist taijutsu of the Hyuga clan, Konoha's strong fist taijutsu inspired from the Senju clan, Uchiha clan's taijutsu that is heavily dependent on the use of Sharingan, Nin taijutsu with his Suijin clone that works with the combination of ice release. Additionally, this Wind Nature Clone A is of extremely high quality. The blood purity of this clone is very high, making it perfect in all aspects, far surpassing his Suijin clone, Suki clone, and even Hyuga Kuroto main body in terms of physique and strength. Moreover, the Shikatsumiyaku Kekkai Genkai alone makes this clone suited for combat, and coupled with highly pure Byakugan that can perfectly keep track of all enemies around, it wouldn't be wrong to say that this clone is a completely ruthless killing machine that is impeccable in all aspects. And this encounter with Orochimaru has clearly proven it. Otherwise, how could Fujin manage to dominate Orochimaru in their entire battle and still retain a lot of combat power? After all, Fujin has still not used all his cards, nor has he used all his strength. Although Fujin knows that Orochimaru has also not used his entire strength yet, Fujin, however, has confidence that even if Orochimaru were to use those secret cards like summoning Manda or using Yamada no Jutsu, it would make no difference and the result would still be the same. Not let's take this up a notch, thought Fujin and looked at Orochimaru's back with a smirk then. Whoosh! Slash! With the sound of breaking wind, Fujin enhanced his speed with the help of strong winds to flash near Orochimaru, and before Orochimaru could react to the sudden increase in Fujin's speed, Fujin instantly cut Orochimaru's body into two pieces from the waist. Ah! Shouted Orochimaru in pain as his body was divided into the upper and lower half. Blood splattered all over the place, and dead white snakes that were cut from the middle started to wriggle and struggle out to reconnect with the lower half, but to no avail. Orochimaru, who was only half now, groaned while trying hard to climb on the ground, struggling to move, but in vain. At this moment, Fujin stepped out of the bone spear and indifferently glanced at the struggling Orochimaru. From the observation with his Byakugan, Fujin can confirm that Orochimaru in front of him is indeed the actual body, not any type of clone. After confirming this, Fujin walked step by step toward Orochimaru. Orochimaru rolled over with some difficulty and looked at Fujin coming towards him step by step, and as he noted Fujin's appearance, he was completely taken aback. Your eyes. They are. Even if Fujin's mask was destroyed by Tobirama using the water-severing wave, Orochimaru was unable to see Fujin's true appearance in the middle of the battle because most of the time, Fujin's face was covered by his white hair. But now that Fujin appeared in front of him, and since there was no obstruction of hair, so Orochimaru finally looked at Fujin's face, and more specifically at those pure white eyes in the eye sockets of Fujin, he instantly recognized them. How could he not? That's Byakugan, one of the 3 great dojutsu that's exclusive to the Hyuga clan. After discovering that Fujin also has Byakugan, Orochimaru was more than convinced that Fujin must have used Chimera Jutsu to absorb several Kekkai Genkai. Otherwise, it is really hard for him to imagine that a shinobi could use any other means to possess not 1, not 2 but 4, and possibly more Kekkai Genkai. It is simply impossible. Byakugan, Shikatsumiyaku, Magnet Release, Typhoon Release, and perhaps other Kekkai Genkai too. So obviously, Fujin had to have used Chimera Jutsu just like Hiriko did. This was Orochimaru's conclusion. Of course, noting Fujin's appearance, Orochimaru for a moment even speculated that Fujin in front of him is his own disciple Hyuga Kuroto, because there's an uncanny resemblance between the two. But Orochimaru soon denied this possibility because of various reasons. Although there is a clear shadow of Hyuga Kuroto in Fujin, there are also various differences, such as the pair of horns on Fujin's forehead. Those red markings above the eyebrows and red under-eye shadows that are unique to the Kagaya clan. The difference in hair color, Hyuga Kuroto's hair is brown while Fujin's hair is pale white with a grayish texture, along with the zigzag division in the middle. There are also obvious height, age, temperamental, and maturity differences. Hyuga Kuroto is already an adult and has the temperament of an adult, but Fujin looks more like a 16-17 years old teenager. And finally, the most important detail, there is no sign of the caged bird curse mark on Fujin's forehead. But Hyuga Kuroto has it on his forehead. Orochimaru personally saw it only a few days ago. This detail alone implies that the boy in front of him is not Hyuga Kuroto, but someone else. Although I do wonder if he has some connection to Kuroto-kun, thought Orochimaru, and decided that he would investigate this matter. After all, Yuhi Kurenai is part of Hyuga Kuroto's Umbu team. And now there is a teenager with quite a resemblance to Kuroto appearing here in order to rescue her? Orochimaru would be an idiot if he didn't notice that something's strange here. Under the rumbling sounds of wood and bones fighting each other not too far away, Fujin looked at Orochimaru without any hint of pride in his eyes for having defeated his sensei, because Fujin knows very well that Orochimaru was far from being defeated. Even that struggle is more of him is just an act to lure him closer. Stopping in front of Orochimaru, Fujin decided to play along with Orochimaru and said in a cold tone, "You are not dead yet. The vitality is indeed amazing." Although Orochimaru's spirit seems a bit languid at this moment, he still grinned and said, "As to be expected from the members of Amatsukami, none of them can be underestimated." Fujin stared at Orochimaru and questioned, "Are these your last words?" Orochimaru smiled slyly upon listening to Fujin's question. Then he suddenly opened his mouth and spit out green smoke. Venomous fog jutsu. The well-prepared Fujin immediately retreated backward, and immediately after weaving hand signs, he shouted, "Typhoon release, great balloon." Under Fujin's control, an enormous amount of wind was gathered, and after taking the form of a tornado, it rushed towards the cloud of green poison mist. The poisonous green mist was immediately engulfed by the tornado and became a part of it. Fujin then directed this venomous tornado towards Orochimaru running in the distance. Obviously, using the cover of venomous green mist, Orochimaru used his unique substitution jutsu to escape towards the two Edo Hokage in the distance, so the body that was laying on the ground was just the outer skin Orochimaru shed, while his actual body was already moving in the direction of Hashirama and Tobirama. Fujin obviously recognized this Orochimaru style, substitution jutsu, which is quite different from general substitution jutsu. In fact, it isn't actually a substitution jutsu, rather it's snake skin shed. Therefore he wasn't much surprised, and had already directed the venomous tornado towards Orochimaru. With this unique type of substitution jutsu, Uchiha Sasuke managed to escape being burned to ashes by Itachi's Amaterasu. It must not be forgotten that even Yugura with Sanbai's version 2 cloak wrapped around his body couldn't escape being burned by Amaterasu, and in the blink of an eye lost his consciousness. Yet Sasuke, with Orochimaru's unique substitution jutsu, managed to escape. This feat alone implies the effectiveness of this jutsu. Of course, this substitution jutsu is not without its drawbacks. For one thing, it is highly taxing on chakra reserves, and for the other thing, using it to confuse Fujin is simply meaningless because of Fujin's Byakugan. As the venomous tornado approached closer and closer to Orochimaru running in the direction of Hashirama and Tobirama, suddenly a giant white snake appeared out of the ground beneath Fujin's feet and rushed towards Fujin's neck, while shouting, "Your body is now mine." Fujin sighed. He didn't even bother to reply and directly used the jutsu, Needle Jizo. Under Fujin's control, his hair elongated and hardened then, formed a protective barrier around him to make sure that this snake gets discouraged to implant the cursed seal on him, unless it wants to die. And of course, the white snake was a bit discouraged, because approaching closer would mean being impaled by hardened hair. Fujin did not stop there and immediately used Art of the Raging Lion's Mane to completely bind the white snake, and then killed him by cutting him with hair blades. Immediately after killing this snake, Fujin flashed and rushed towards the real Orochimaru. Earlier he wasn't sure whether this one was the actual body, or the one rushing towards Hashirama and Tobirama is the actual body. But now that he has killed this white snake, and the fact that the other one did not die because of the venomous tornado implies that the other one is the actual body. The reason for being so sure is also because there is no other Orochimaru that Fujin sees in his Byakugan vision. With that understood, Fujin chased after Orochimaru. Even if Fujin didn't shuttle through the bone spears, and did not use iron sand to fly, the speed with just chakra enhancement was also extremely fast, better than his main body in the base state, and perhaps even faster than Shirsue's body flicker. Therefore, even if he started late, in just a few short breaths, Fujin narrowed the distance between him and Orochimaru. Orochimaru looked at Fujin, who was approaching closer and closer, and his face turned gloomy. He thought that even if he couldn't fool the other guy because of the Byakugan, the white snake clone he left behind should have been enough to buy him some time. Orochimaru didn't expect that Fujin would first use a jutsu on him, then deal with the snake clone in seconds, and then even manage to catch up to him. Everything he is doing is being read by the other party like an open book. Curse his Byakugan. Obviously, Orochimaru analyzed that it's because of Byakugan that Fujin could keep track of all his movements and actions. So there is an obvious annoyance. At the same time, he is becoming more and more afraid of Fujin. Because everyone in the shinobi world knows that Hiriko used Chimera Jutsu to steal 5 Kekii Genkai. So Orochimaru obviously suspects that in addition to Byakugan, Shikatsumiyaku, Magnet Release, Typhoon Release, Fujin also holds other Kekii Genkai. Moreover, there is no precedent that only 5 Kekii Genkai can be stolen by the use of Chimera Jutsu. So it's possible that Fujin has more than 5 Kekii Genkai, and Orochimaru is no longer interested in finding out what those other Kekii Genkai are.